The signal that should never have been sent. The stars above the research moon Relok 3 were always quiet. Too quiet, some would say. No war, no trade ships, no patrols. Just frozen valleys, silent labs, and quiet scientists studying strange plants. And gas readings. Lauder, a junior xenologist, spent most of his days inside an observation dome, watching radio waves bounce through the atmosphere. He was curious, bored, and far too clever for his own good. That was a dangerous combination. On any planet. But especially dangerous on Relok 3. It started with a joke. An old story from human history had fascinated Lauder for years. He read about how Earth once used a 3-letter signal, SOS, to cry for help. It was primitive, emotional, and to him, very funny, so. Just to see what would happen, Lauder created a short pulse in an old Earth frequency. He modified the station transmitter, adjusted the modulation, and laughed to himself as he pressed the button. The signal blinked into space. 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots, SOS. He waited for the reply, but of course nothing came, just static, silence, and the hum of machines that night. He logged the event as a harmless transmission test. No one checked it, no one cared. But 3 days later, something strange happened. The stars weren't quiet anymore. A deep vibration echoed across the moon's crust. Sensors blinked red. Then shut off, long-range scanners overloaded, then went completely dark. One of the outer towers exploded in sparks. The sky grew dim not from nightfall, but from something above. The central AI triggered an emergency lockdown. Sirens wailed, and the researchers ran to shelters. Lauder didn't move. He stood frozen. In the control dome, staring up above Relok 3 hung a shape. No ship ID matched, no code was registered. It was massive, triangular, blacker than space itself. Lights blinked slowly across its surface like it was breathing. A single word appeared on the console. It wasn't from their systems. It was from the ship above. Received. That was it. One word, one confirmation. The signal had been heard. Someone had come, but not someone. Something. The science director screamed through the intercom. Who sent that signal? Who? But Lauder didn't answer. His lips trembled. His eyes were fixed on the ship. It was human. Old records called them Deathworlders. Creatures from a violent, unstable planet called Earth. They had survived global wars, nuclear winters, extinction events, and even themselves. They were not part of the Galactic Accord. They had chosen isolation. And now one of their war fleets had arrived because of him. Relok 3 had no weapons, no defenses, no fleets to protect them. Just scientists, data, and now regret. The humans said nothing more. They didn't need to. Dozens of smaller ships detached from the main vessel and landed around the research moon. Not with explosions, but with precision. Calm, cold, and terrifying. Lauder was grabbed by security and dragged into the control center. The director shouted at him. "What did you do?" I only wanted to see," Lauder stuttered. "It was just a signal." The director's voice cracked. "You sent an Earth SOS. You fool." Then the lights died. The comms went dead. And every screen flickered to a human face helmeted. Emotionless, glowing blue eyes behind the visor. It spoke calmly. "You sent a distress signal." The room fell silent. The voice continued. "We came to help. Help." That word never sounded so deadly. Lauder whispered, "We didn't mean it." The voice replied, "Intent does not change consequence." And with that, the feed cut. Outside, the ships formed a circle. Above, the warship opened panels on its belly. Something began to glow. The director gasped. "They're charging a weapon." Lauder dropped to his knees. No, please." It was a mistake, but it was too late. A single act of curiosity had summoned the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. And now they had come. Not as saviors, but as judges. And the sentence was about to be delivered. We just wanted to see who'd come. 3 days ago, Lauder had just been a bored junior researcher. He had no authority, no military background, and no real purpose on Relok 3. All he had was a curious mind, a fascination with human history, and far too much free time. Now he sat in a containment room with 4 silent guards. Above him, a Deathworlder fleet hovered in the sky. He could hear faint rumbling ships shifting. Energy humming, every vibration reminded him of what he'd done. He hadn't meant for this, not death, not panic, not judgment from the most feared species in the galaxy. He had just wanted a reaction, just a ripple, a mystery to record in the data logs. Instead, he had called them. In his trembling hands was the tablet he used to send the signal. It looked harmless, so simple. A child's toy compared to what was now orbiting the moon. When the guards finally moved, they didn't speak. They simply opened the door and gestured for Lotter to follow. He walked slowly, legs shaking with every step. They led him to a central chamber, where the council of researchers sat, their faces pale and drawn. Screens flickered around them, showing the black human vessels, and in the center, a message repeating in a calm human voice: violation of sacred emergency protocol detected. Prepare for diplomatic extraction. No resistance will be tolerated. The lead researcher, Director Von Tell, looked at Lotter with dead eyes. This is what you wanted? He asked bitterly. Lotter swallowed. No, I just wanted to see who'd come. A heavy silence filled the room. Who'd come? Another scientist hissed. We were told humans went quiet centuries ago. They did, Von Tell said. But they never left. Lotter nodded slowly. I read it in the archives, he said softly. The humans signed no peace treaty, joined no alliance, but warned us. If an Earth SOS is ever heard, someone will answer. He paused. It was treated like myth, like folklore. The council exchanged uneasy glances. No one thought. They still monitored those channels, someone whispered. But they did. Von Ter muttered. They always did. Before anyone could speak further, the chamber lights turned red. The main screen blinked to life. A calm female voice said, "Incoming transport." A moment later, the outer doors opened. 3 human figures walked in, fully armored, visors glowing faint blue. They didn't speak. They didn't raise weapons. The leader stopped, lifted her helmet, and stared directly at Lotter. Her face was strangely gentle, yet cold, like a surgeon before a heart operation. You sent the signal, she said. Lotter nodded, unable to speak. She didn't look angry, just disappointed. Why? She asked. Lotter struggled to form words. We were bored. I just wanted to see what would happen. The woman blinked slowly. In our history, she said softly, those 3 letters SOS meant people were dying, begging for help. She walked slowly toward him. They were used during shipwrecks, planetary disasters, nuclear fallout. She stopped in front of him. We heard your call. We dropped everything to come. Because once, long ago, we promised that no SOS would go unanswered again. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And you used it as a joke. The silence in the room was heavier than any weapon. Even the guards looked away. The human woman straightened. We are not here to destroy your species, she said, but to remind the galaxy of the price of forgotten promises. She turned to Director Von Tell. Prepare your people. For what? He asked slowly. She didn't answer. The humans walked out, silent as ghosts. No threats, no speeches, no demands. But their presence was enough. The message was clear. They were disappointed. Later that night, Lotter sat alone in his room. He stared at the stars and wondered what would have happened if no one had answered. But deep down, he knew they were always listening, even in silence. And now that they had returned, the galaxy would never laugh at Earth again. Because now everyone knew the truth. When the Deathworlders come, they don't arrive for fun. They arrive because you called. And they never leave things the same. First contact or final warning. A thick silence covered Relok 3. Even the wind had stopped. The research moon that once buzzed with small sounds machines. Whispers, footsteps now felt like a tomb. No one dared speak loudly. No one dared move. Without reason, because the Deathworlders had landed. and everyone felt the pressure in their bones. Inside the central command dome, all lights had been dimmed except for one. A giant holoscreen glowed in the center, showing the shape of the human dreadnought in orbit. Its presence blocked the stars, its name unreadable, its origin unknown. The message on the screen hadn't changed. Violation of sacred protocol. Diplomatic review in progress. Non-compliance will result in full enforcement. Director Von Tell sat quietly, his hands folded, eyes sunken. Around him sat members of the Research Council, faces pale, uncertain. And at the edge of the room stood Lauter, shoulders hunched, guilt wrapped around him like chains. Then came a soft knock, metal tapping metal. The door slid open, and the humans entered again. This time they brought someone new. He was taller than the rest, wearing no helmet. His face was weathered, calm, but his eyes were like carved stone, hard, cold, unmoved. He walked to the center of the dome, looked at everyone in silence. Then he spoke. "I am Envoy Marshal Rix, Earth Union Response Corps." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You have activated an emergency distress frequency once used by Earth during times of extreme crisis." "No." One responded. He continued. "This signal was protected under the Pact of Echoes, signed after the Burn Wars. It was agreed that any use of this signal, by any species, would be treated as a call for immediate intervention." Von Tell cleared his throat. "Envoy Rix, the transmission was unintentional. It was a mistake made by—" The envoy held up one hand. "A mistake does not erase its consequences," he said. "But Earth is not here to conquer or destroy." Hope flickered in Lauter's chest. Maybe they would understand. Maybe this could be solved. Envoy Rix turned toward him. "You sent it," he said plainly. Lauter nodded slowly. "Yes, I was curious." He looked up. "I wanted to see if it still worked, if anyone would hear it." Rix's voice did not change. "You were heard." He gestured to the screen above. "And now Earth watches, listens, judges." Everyone turned as the screen changed. A new feed appeared, countless human faces. Leaders, military officers, historians, scientists, watching from across the galaxy, connected to the tribunal ship in orbit. "This," Rix said, "is first contact, but it is also your final warning." He walked to the center of the room. "In the past, galactic empires ignored our calls, laughed at our pain, left us to die." He looked directly at the researchers. "And so we promised, never again. Any true distress signal would be answered with full force." He took a breath. "But what happens when that signal is abused?" No one answered. They didn't have to. "The punishment," he continued, "is not death. It is remembrance." That word confused Lauter. Remembrance? "You will be remembered," Rix said. "Not for your science, not for your wisdom, but for the moment you reminded Earth why silence is safer." He turned away. "Your species will not be erased, but your research will be confiscated. Your communications will be restricted. Your moon will be repurposed into a beacon of caution." Director Von Tell stood, trembling. "Please, give us a chance to fix this." Rix didn't look back. "There's no fixing what is already seen," he said. "Only warnings for the future." With that, he and the other humans left the room, leaving behind cold silence and heavy hearts. Lauter collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. He had wanted knowledge. He had found judgment. Outside, the sky flashed once, brief and bright. Earth's satellites were deploying. Relok 3 was no longer a research outpost. It was now a signal post, a monument to a single message. 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots. The message was simple, but what came in return was not. The judgment of the Deathworlders. Sun never truly set on Relok 3. But now, it felt like night had fallen forever. The skies above were filled with ships, black, silent, waiting. Not a single cannon fired. Not a single soldier marched. And still, everyone on the moon knew. They were already defeated, from the command dome to the outer fields. Researchers packed what little they could, not because they were ordered to, but because of fear. fear of what came next. They had not been bombed, invaded, or tortured. The Deathworlders did not need such things. Instead, they had done something far worse. They had judged. Lauder stood outside the shelter entrance, eyes scanning the dark sky. He could see them. The giant Earth Tribunal ship, floating like a black god above their world. He had dreamed of humans as myths. Now they were something else, not monsters. Not heroes, just beings who had lived through too much. The tribunal was beginning. He was called in first, inside the dome. The walls had changed. Human tech now controlled the room. Holoprojectors flickered, showing scenes from Earth's past. A video played. Humans digging survivors out of a burning city. Then another doctor's crying beside a dying child during a plague. Another, an astronaut sending an SOS from the surface of a doomed moon. Each time, the same three-letter cry. SOS. And each time, Earth had responded, even when it cost them, even when no one else came. Lauder stood in silence as the clips ended. A voice came through the speaker. "You are the sender of the signal." He nodded. "Yes. You used a sacred frequency." "Yes, you knew what it meant." He hesitated, then said, "I thought I did," the voice replied. "Then you understand why this is not punishment. It is judgment." He felt his legs weaken. "But I didn't mean harm," he whispered. "That doesn't change what you caused," the voice said. The screen changed, showing the faces of thousands of humans from across their colonies and fleets. Watching, silent, judging. They weren't angry, they were hurt, and somehow that was worse. Director Von Tell entered next, along with other high-ranking researchers. The human envoy Rix was waiting, his expression still calm. "We understand." "This was not an act of war," Von Tell said. "We truly do, but please, allow us to repair the damage." Rix shook his head slowly. "You misunderstand," he said. "There's no damage to fix. The moment you pressed that signal, you entered a space of old pain." He turned the screen to show an ancient human colony, destroyed and silent. "No one came when we cried for help," Rick said. "So we made a promise. Never again would a cry go unanswered." The image changed again to Relok 3. "Your signal reached us, and so we came." He looked at all of them. "You called for help, you got Earth." A quiet gasp moved through the room. "And now," Rix continued, "we give judgment." He opened a small case, placed it on the table. Inside was a glowing crystal device. "This beacon will remain here. It will broadcast your mistake to the galaxy." One of the researchers frowned. "A punishment?" Rix replied, "A warning. You are not the first to forget Earth." He said, "But you may be the last." He walked toward the door, then paused. "One day, someone else will hear your story, and they will think twice before mocking a cry for help." Then he left. The tribunal was over. There was no war, no treaty, no peace signing. Just the silent judgment of a species that never forgot what it was like to be ignored. Lauder returned to his room. He looked at the stars again. They looked the same, but everything had changed in the center of the moon, Earth's beacon now. Pulsed softly, 3 lights, 3 sounds, 3 reminders, not just a signal, a lesson. The galaxy would remember Relok 3, not for its science, but for the day the Deathworlders judged and found them guilty. The last plea before silence, the beacon now glowed in the heart of Relok 3. Its soft pulse echoed through the moon's empty corridors. 3 flashes, pause, 3 flashes, pause, the pattern of the ancient Earth signal, SOS, but no one laughed. Anymore, no one called it old, or silly, or primitive, not after what it had brought. Lauder stood at the edge of the landing field, watching as the last of the human diplomatic craft lifted into the sky. The ship didn't roar, didn't leave smoke. It just rose smooth, cold, terrifyingly calm. He thought it was over, that the judgment had passed, that they were spared. But he was wrong. Inside the command dome, Director Von Tell read a new message. His hands trembled as the text appeared across the screen. "Final phase initiating. Protocol 77A activated preservation of species confirmed. Destruction of knowledge underway. No, Von Tell whispered. No, please, this can't be. He rushed to the console, trying to override it, but nothing responded. The moon's systems were no longer theirs. In the research vaults, drones began to move, human-built. Fast and precise, they went from lab to lab, collecting data cores, ripping out terminals, and burning anything left behind. Von Tell slammed his fists on the desk. Why would they do this? We said we were sorry. Another researcher muttered. They're not punishing us. They're erasing our work. Lauder entered the room as alarms began to blare. He saw the message on the screen. His heart dropped. They're not just judging us, he said softly. They're silencing us. All across the moon, the brilliant work of generations, genetic discoveries, planetary simulations, deep space observations was being turned to ash, and not with rage, with order. It was controlled, surgical, and final. They don't want anyone to think this place mattered, Von Tell said. They want to remove our name from history. Lauder fell into a chair, covering his face with his hands. This is worse than death, he whispered. But there was one thing the humans had not taken, a small backup server hidden deep underground. Disconnected from the main systems, it wasn't much, just logs, messages, personal recordings. But it was still truth. Von Tell made a decision. We're going to send one last transmission, he said. Off this moon, past Earth space, into the stars. Someone must know. They rushed to the hidden chamber, the lights flickering above them. Time was running out. Lauder opened the system, fingers shaking as he typed. The message was short, but it carried everything. We sent a signal for curiosity. We received judgment beyond imagination. They did not kill us, but they erased us. If you ever think of calling Earth, mean it. This is Relok 3, the moon that dared to cry Wolf. He hit send. The message blasted through a narrow gap in the jamming field, a whisper in the dark. Maybe someone, somewhere would hear it, maybe not, but it was all they had left, moments. Later, the chamber door sealed. A human drone appeared outside, watching, unmoving. A voice played over the speakers. You were told not to interfere. Lauder stepped forward. Hands raised. Please, he said. We've sent no attack, only truth, the voice replied. Then truth is your final gift. And with that, the drone turned away. The chamber remained sealed but untouched, as if it had been forgiven. Outside, the moon's buildings were collapsing. Not from weapons, but from precise demolition. No explosions, just walls folding, ceilings vanishing, data erased. The once proud research moon was being turned into a monument. Not of honor, but of warning. By nightfall, only one structure remained, the beacon, blinking red, cold, and eternal. Lauder stood beside it, the wind now cold and sharp. He looked up at the stars, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel wonder. He felt small. You came, he whispered to the sky. You answered. His voice broke. And now, we are silent. Far above, the last human warship turned away. Not in anger, but in silence. Because when the Deathworlders deliver judgment, they don't shout, they don't gloat. They just leave behind a memory and make sure that no one ever forgets. Fire from the stars above Relok 3 were not bright tonight. They were hidden behind the shapes of ships. Not hundreds, not thousands, just enough. Enough to darken the sky. Enough to end a chapter of history. Enough to make sure the galaxy never ignored Earth again. Lauder stood near the old landing strip, his hands trembling. He wasn't alone. Researchers, engineers, even maintenance workers all stood in silence, watching, waiting, breathing as if each breath might be their last. There was no countdown, no siren, no scream of engines, just a soft, deep hum, so low it shook the bones. Far above, the largest Earthship, the Tribunal-class dreadnought, opened. Not its weapons bay, but its truth port, a section of its hull slid back, revealing a smooth, glowing core. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Red, then white, then blue. Not colors of war, but of memory, inside the command dome. Director Von Tell received a final message. Simple, cold, permanent. Knowledge erased, signal preserved. Fire incoming, stand clear. That was all it said. That was all it needed to say. In orbit, the dreadnought didn't fire missiles. It didn't drop bombs instead. It released light. A beam, wide and silent, fell from its center. It touched the ground like moonlight, gentle, glowing, and then everything vanished. The central tower melted, not with fire but with purity. Data cores dissolved into dust. Research buildings crumbled. Not exploded, just disappeared. The beam didn't burn. It wiped, precise, smooth, calculated. Lauder watched in shock. Not a single scream was heard. Not one shot fired. The Earth fleet was not angry. They were deliberate. They weren't punishing. They were teaching. The other researchers dropped to their knees. Some cried. Some prayed. One screamed, "Make it stop." But no one could stop it, because this wasn't war. It was a correction. And Earth was the hand holding the eraser. By night's end, Reloc 3 looked different. Flat, quiet, clean. Only the beacon remained still pulsing, still warning. The message was still there, still blinking. 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots, SOS. But no help would come again, because this place had already used its call, and Earth had answered, from orbit. Envoy Rix watched the operation end. He said nothing. He simply turned off the viewing panel. His job was done. Inside his ship, officers moved without emotion. They logged the mission, recorded the deletion, stamped it. Judgment complete. Galactic reminder created. Back on the moon, Lauder and the survivors were herded into a holding chamber, still alive, still breathing. But everything they had built was gone. No more labs, no more towers, no more history, just them and the beacon. A soft voice came through the room, human, warm. "I hope you remember this day." Lauder stood and walked toward the sound. He didn't cry anymore. His eyes were empty. "I remember," he whispered. "Every day, every night." The human voice replied, "Good." Then silence again. The survivors were relocated to a barren world, not a prison, but not a home either. No technology above stone tools, no broadcasts allowed, no research permitted. Only time, time to reflect, time to remember. And above Reloc 3, the Earth fleet turned away, not because they were done, but because they had finished. They came for a signal. They delivered judgment. They didn't ask for thanks. They didn't wait for praise. They just made sure the stars would never forget. A new moon, a new warning. 10 years passed, but Reloc 3 was still silent. The beacon still blinked. 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots, SOS. But this time, it was not a call for help. It was a grave marker. A warning in the stars, the once busy Research Moon was now a field of silver ash. Flat, empty, untouched. No one lived there anymore. No one dared. Above it, the old beacon tower stood alone, maintained not by machines, but by Earth itself. An unmanned satellite circled the moon, broadcasting a single message on all frequencies. "This is Reloc 3, the moon that called for help as a joke," the Deathworlders answered. "Let this place be a lesson." Across the galaxy, star pilots gave the moon-wide distance. Cargo routes curved around it. No trader approached, no explorer lingered. To the new generations of alien children, it was called the Silent Moon, a cursed place. A place where even whispers could bring the storm, but deep. In the colony of Vetranine, one former researcher lived quietly. Lauder, older now, slower, but his memory was sharp. Every night he looked up at the stars and remembered the fire that didn't burn, the voice that didn't yell, the judgment that didn't scream. He lived in a small hut, far from others. But sometimes young ones came to visit him. They had heard stories, legends. One night, a young alien girl sat by his fire, her eyes wide, her voice soft. "Is it true?" she asked. "You called Earth, and they erased your world?" Lauder nodded slowly. Yes, he said. I pressed a button. I sent a signal that was not meant to be sent. I was curious. The girl frowned. But it was just a signal. He looked at her, eyes heavy with years. It wasn't just a signal. It was a promise. Their promise. He stirred the fire gently. They made a vow that no cry for help would ever be ignored again, even if it came from an enemy, even if it cost them. The girl shivered. So why did they destroy your work? Lauder looked at the sky. They didn't destroy us. They erased the mockery, because in their eyes, we insulted something sacred. He handed her a small metal disc. It was scratched but still worked. A copy of his final message, the one he had sent just before Earth's final purge. Keep this, he said. Not to hide, but to remember. The girl took it, held it tightly. I'll never forget, she whispered. Far above, the stars blinked, and deep in hidden corners of the galaxy, others listened. The story of Relok 3 spread. Tales were told in hushed voices. Warnings placed in flight schools. New rules written in treaties. Do not trigger the Earth signal unless you mean it. Do not wake the Deathworlders unless you are ready to be seen, fully, completely, judged. Earth never responded to any other hoax signal after Relok 3, because there were no more. Every race now feared the three-letter message. Even when used in emergencies, it was used with shaking hands, with tears, with truth. One alien empire even passed a law. No communication system may contain the Earth distress frequency unless authorized. And the punishment? Not prison, but permanent silence. Lauder lived many more years. He never left Vetranine. He never rebuilt what was lost, because he understood something the others didn't. It wasn't about power. It was about memory, about pain. Earth had answered. Not with fire, but with reminder, and that reminder now floated in space cold. Pulsing, alive. A new traveler once came close. A young captain, eager, curious. He saw the beacon, read the message, and turned his ship around without a word, because some lights in the dark don't mean welcome. They mean never again. And that's what Relok 3 became. Not a battlefield, not a ruin, but a line, one you only crossed once.